Johnny, going into this year, many were saying we were going to see that switch out of retailers into resources stocks, and we saw it at the beginning of the year, but tapered off over the past couple of sessions. Just going with what Tom's been saying, would that give you a bit of confidence in some of our commodity counters moving forward?
Some of the commodity counters, in our view, offer value. I mean, we are concerned about China, particularly Chinese inflation. Our concern is that at some point inflation could get too high in China, which would cause the authorities there to have to try and stem, cool that economy, and that would have a knock-on effect in a lot of the base metals, particularly sort of iron ore, and that would be negative for the likes of Anglo American and BHP Billiton.
But I mean, we have seen China raising reserve requirements throughout the second half of last year, tightening monetary policy, still growth coming through at 10.2%. So even if they cut that growth a little bit, it looks like there will still be quite strong demand from that country.
Oh no, definitely there'll still be strong demand from China. It's obviously just incremental growth that the market is factoring into the share prices of some of these diversified miners.
If you were looking at the diversified miners, we've got Anglo American and Billiton, so that's the two that most people talk about. How about some of the more locally focused ones, so African Rainbow Minerals, your Exaros, companies like that?
Most of them look expensive, particularly probably the likes of Kia, just given how strong the iron ore price is. If iron ore, like some believe, is going to remain strong for the next 4 years, then you'll get super profits out of Kia and probably lots of buybacks and dividends. But to the extent that iron ore prices come down, we think Kia is exposed to the downside. Also, we notice a disparity between the margin that companies that are producing iron ore, their margins, relative to their main customers being the steel producers around the world, particularly in China. We think there's a disconnect where your iron ore margins are in the 40s, your steel producers are in the sort of low teens, sometimes below 10%. So that dynamic might also begin to shift, where the steel producers actually put pressure on the iron ore producers.
Would you prefer to go for a company like Kumba directly, or would you go through through Anglo American?
It would all depend on valuations. So it would depend on sort of valuations at the time. At the moment, we wouldn't be holding either in our portfolios.
BHP Billiton?
We prefer BHP Billiton to Anglo American.
Just taking a look at some of today's movers, and of course we had Anglo and Billiton among those top gainers. So Anglo up 2.7%, BHP Billiton up 2.4%. I suppose that stands to reason with the bounce back we saw in commodity prices today.
Correct.
Shoprite though, 3% up today, and I think the share was up quite nicely yesterday as well. Heavy sell-off in the retailers in the first couple of weeks of the year. Do you think this is just coming back from an oversold position?
I've seen a couple of brokers recommending, a long Shoprite, short Massmart kind of trade. Arguing that, Massmart was one that was taken out, so that one ran quite hard. There's now a floor to that price, but if you sort of want sort of general upside, Shoprite seems to have lagged Massmart. So some of the guys are recommending a short-term switch into Shoprite. Our view is that Shoprite's earnings have grown tremendously over the last 7 years. You're really buying peak earnings at a peak multiple. It doesn't really make sense from our point of view.
That share was trading close to 100 Rand not that very long ago, went down into the high 80s, so back around 93, still looking pretty pricey for you.
Yeah, in our view, very pricey.
Today's losers, Nedbank leading the loser board, down 1.7%. I didn't see anything specific to that. We saw some of the other banks also coming under pressure there, so First Rand under 0.3%. Anything in that? Nedbank
has been presenting to investors in Cape Town last week and Joburg this week on their sort of Nedbank retail strategy. So they've had all the analysts in the room trying to sort of talk through the sort of retail strategy, and perhaps the guys aren't as sort of optimistic after having heard the sort of story from or the update from Nedbank management.
So perhaps they're not saying the right things to those analysts. Yeah.